I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily Week in Review. Canada has installed its 30th Governor General today in Ottawa. Mary Simon's swearing-in ceremony was scaled back due to the pandemic. The number of attendees to the Senate ceremony was limited. Public health rules required everyone to wear masks and be physically distant. The ceremony included traditional Inuit elements as Her Excellency becomes the country's first Indigenous Governor General. The federal government is expecting about 5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine this week, enough to fully inoculate all eligible Canadians. This week's shipment will bring the total number of doses received up to 68 million. Officials say that will be enough to administer 2 doses to all 33.2 million Canadians aged 12 and over. As of Friday, over 57% of Canadians 12 and up had been fully vaccinated, and 79.66% had received at least 1 dose. It appears the pandemic has changed the way most Canadians think about their future with long-term care homes. A survey from the Angus Reid Institute found more than 80% of respondents said their views have changed since COVID-19 hit. About half of those surveyed said they now dread the thought of themselves or their loved ones being in long-term care. 3/4 of respondents said significant changes, if not a complete overhaul, need to happen. And the same number also said they would support making long-term care a fully integrated part of the public health system. Long-term care residents have accounted for the majority of COVID deaths in Canada. Pediatricians are warning parents that there could be a spike in respiratory illness amongst children this summer. Dr. Pascal Lavoie, one of several medical experts to co-author a letter in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, says a respiratory syncytial virus is one of the most common cold viruses that circulate widely in adults and children in winter. Since COVID-19 precautions like social distancing, masking, and hand washing contributed to an abnormally quiet 2020 flu season, there is growing concern that Canada could see a rise in RSV reported in the coming months among previously unexposed infants and young children. A strike is underway by 900 Rio Tinto workers at the mining company's aluminum smelting facilities in Kitimat, BC. The union had issued a 72-hour strike notice after nearly 7 weeks of negotiations, and bargaining continued right up until the early Sunday strike deadline. Unifor National President Jerry Dias says the walkout is about what he calls Rio Tinto's greed and lack of respect for union members. The company said earlier that it was committed to working with the union to reach a mutually beneficial outcome. Well, meanwhile, the union representing Bombardier and de Havilland aerospace workers in Toronto are threatening to hit the picket lines this week unless negotiations can guarantee Dash 8 turboprop-up jobs remain in the area when production resumes. After a 3-week cooling-off period, separate talks were set to restart today ahead of a Tuesday strike deadline. Unifor National President Jerry Dias says the negotiations are about protecting highly skilled advanced manufacturing jobs. The talks come as the aviation sector is taking steps to recover from the pandemic shutdown. The HMCS Fredericton has departed from Halifax on a 6-month deployment for the first time since a helicopter claimed the lives of 6 of its crew members last year. The Royal Canadian Navy frigate left Halifax on Saturday to be a part of NATO's Operation Reassurance. The vessel's deployment last year was rocked when its Cyclone helicopter crashed into the Ionian Sea off the coast of Greece in April. The crash caused the worst single-day loss of life for the Canadian Armed Forces since 6 soldiers were killed in a roadside bombing in Afghanistan in 2007. Former CanTrust leaders are scheduled to make their first court appearance in Toronto today. Court dates for the 3 executives come roughly 3 years after the cannabis company became embroiled in unlicensed growing allegations. Former Chief Executive Peter Aceto, former Vice Chairman Mark Litwin, and former Chairman Eric Paul each face charges of fraud, making false or misleading statements to the OSC, and authorizing, permitting, or acquiescing in the commission of an offense. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is recalling a cheese product that was distributed across Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec. The agency says it's recalling Cahill's brand Original Irish Porter cheese due to a possible listeria contamination. Consumers should not eat the products. Instead, the agency says the items should be thrown out or returned to their store of purchase. Canada has its first gold medal in Tokyo. Swimmer Maggie McNeil struck Olympic gold this morning by finishing first in the women's 100-meter butterfly in a time of 55.59 seconds. The 21-year-old from London, Ontario, became Canada's first multi-medalist at the Tokyo Games, following a silver medal in the women's 4x100 freestyle relay on Sunday. This past week, we took a look at the historic appointment of Mary Simon as Governor General. Our interview with the president of the Institute for the Study of the Crown in Canada coming up next. Canada made history yesterday with the installation of its first Indigenous Governor General. Mary Simon has pledged to help the country reckon with the historical mistreatment of Indigenous peoples while charting a path forward. The Inuk leader from Quebec and former Canadian diplomat was installed as this country's 30th representative of the Queen on Monday. Her Excellency said amid the horrific findings of unmarked graves on the grounds of several former residential schools, she will strive to hold together the tension of the past with the promise of the future in a wise and thoughtful way. Well, joining us now to talk more on the installation and what it means for the future of Canadian politics is Dr. Michael Jackson, president of the Institute for the Study of the Crown in Canada. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, what would you say are the main takeaways from this historic appointment, sir?
It is, as you say, a very historic appointment. It is our first Indigenous Governor General, and furthermore, Ms. Simon is Inuk, and she's from northern Quebec, from Canada's far north, really. And that is a historic moment in any respect. And I would also say it is long overdue. If you think about it, the provinces, a number of provinces have had Indigenous lieutenant governors for some time. British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan at the moment. Russ Marasti is a Cree First Nation. Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick. So it is long overdue in the National Vice-Regal Office.
And would you be able to give us some insight into the role of a Governor General in terms of how they play in Parliament and more generally in Canada's constitutional makeup?
As you've said, the Governor General represents the Queen and the Crown in Canada. The Queen is our highest symbolic office, but the Governor General does most of her duties at the federal level, as the Lieutenant Governors do at the provincial level. And as such, she's an integral part of Parliament. Parliament has three parts, you know: the Queen, the Senate, and the House of Commons. And the Governor General fills in for the Queen in Parliament. So she gives royal assent to legislation. It cannot become law unless the Governor General gives royal assent in the name of the Queen. She opens and prorogues Parliament. She gives a speech from the throne. She signs federal orders in council. She signs all kinds of commissions and appointments. So it's a key constitutional role as well as a highly symbolic one.
And in addition to representing the Queen in Canada, the Governor General is also the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces. So what will that entail for Her Excellency, sir?
The Governor General has the title of Commander-in-Chief of Canada, and it is a historic role. And what it is meant to show is that our armed forces, like our police forces, swear allegiance to the sovereign and not to a political party or individual. That's very important. So the political party of the day does not claim the allegiance of the armed forces. The Governor General and the Crown do. And Ms. Simon, as you could tell at her installation when she inspected the Guards of Honor at the National War Memorial and again at Rideau Hall, she was very taken with that role. She spoke personally to a number of the soldiers on duty, and she's going to have a mission of healing because the Canadian forces are in a difficult time at the moment. They're having morale problems. They've had problems at the very top, and I expect she will use her influential role as Commander-in-Chief to pursue that avenue of reconciliation on behalf of all Canadians.
Now, speaking about reconciliation, she's saying that her appointment is an important step towards Canada's goal of reconciliation. What kind of future steps do you see her taking to achieve this goal, sir? We've got about a minute and a half left.
Interestingly, and 2019, our institute, through its founding president, John Fraser, and our vice president in charge of Indigenous Affairs, Nathan Tidridge, submitted a brief to Rideau Hall in January 2019, suggesting just how the Office of Governor General and Rideau Hall could be a gathering place, a meeting ground, where First Nations and Indigenous leaders in general could meet with the Queen's representative. The Crown is the foundation of our relationship, our rapport as we are all treaty people in Canada, and the Crown is the symbol of that process of meeting and cooperation with the original peoples of this land.
All right, sir, just about 45 seconds left, but considering all of the controversy around our previous Governor General, how does Her Excellency's political career and record prepare her differently for the role in comparison to our former Governor General, Julie Payette?
This time, the Prime Minister and the government chose very wisely, consulting an advisory council. And Mary Simon has all the attributes that are needed. She understands the office, what it means. She's been involved in government. She was involved in the patriation of the Constitution. She was an ambassador. She's a circumpolar representative. So she gets it.
All right, don't go away. Coming up after the break, this past week's health segment with Dr. Abhishek Raut. This and more to come on the Forum Daily Week in Review. As COVID-19 pandemic precautions drop off, medical experts are worried about a resurgence of RSV, a respiratory disease that is known to particularly affect children younger than 2 years old. RSV, also known as respiratory syncytial virus, is an infection that appears to be rising in Australia and more recently in the United States. The Canadian Medical Association Journal said in a commentary this week that RSV could see a resurgence in Canada as well if new precautions are not taken. The article also claims the RSV season in Canada is usually late fall to early spring. The authors say a proactive approach is needed in Canada. Well, to talk more on this in our weekly TIA Health medical segment is Dr. Abhishek Raut, Medical Director at Appletree Medical Group. Doctor, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Great to be here.
So let's start with an overview of what exactly RSV is and its symptoms.
Right. So RSV causes acute respiratory tract illnesses in patients really of all ages. Almost all children are affected by RSV by 2 years of age, and we almost often see reinfections as well. It's the most common cause of lower respiratory tract infection in kids, especially less than 1 year of age. And for most people, it's mild symptoms, cold-like symptoms, runny nose, mild cough, but it can also cause severe respiratory disease like bronchiolitis, bronchospasms, pneumonias, and even acute respiratory failure.
Now, researchers in this article claim that this virus especially affects children who are younger than 2 years old. So why this particular demographic, Dr. Raut?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the big groups that are at risk are basically premature infants, very young infants, less than 6 months or younger, or children younger than 2 years old with chronic lung disease or congenital heart disease. We think it's because that the infection is so common that as you get older, you've been exposed to it multiple times. So there's this immunity to it, whereas with very young kids, they don't have that exposure.
All right, Dr. Raut. Now, we've seen pandemic restrictions starting to loosen across Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the pandemic impacted the number of RSV patients in Canada?
All right, it's a great question. So RSV really spreads through droplets containing the virus. So when someone coughs or sneezes, for instance, they can also live a few hours on surfaces like countertops, doorknobs, and toys, and really easy to spread from hand-to-hand contact there. Obviously, there's some similarity here with the coronavirus in this transmission. So RSV ended up dropping very sharply in the pandemic as social distancing measures all but stopped the spread. So for Canada, for instance, only 239 tests for RSV were positive between August 2020 and May 2021, compared to what we would usually expect, which is 18,660 positive cases in 2019.
Wow, that's a significant jump, Doctor. So now we're stepping out of the pandemic. So we are seeing concern around a resurgence of this virus while immunity to it is low. So should Canadians and Canadian parents be concerned?
I think so. I think we do expect that the cases will increase dramatically, and I do expect that the majority of Canadians may experience very mild symptoms. However, I think we're still very much at risk, especially for our young children, and we need special precautions for them.
So, what kind of steps can parents take to protect their infants from RSV, doctor?
The simplest thing to do is continue all the preventative habits we've developed over the past year. Hand washing as much as possible, mask wearing, and also if you have a child at higher risk, consider social distancing to continue as well.
And going back to this commentary here, the doctors in this article are saying that a proactive approach is needed by officials. So, doctor, what kind of steps should our leaders take before RSV season? We've got about a minute and a half left, doctor.
Sure. So, what we're seeing is as the pandemic related physical distancing measures are relaxed, we should really focus on healthcare providers continuing to provide emphasis on hygiene, such as washing hands. We support really the ongoing efforts to keep vulnerable infants from coming into contact with other people with respiratory illness. And other protective measures that we don't talk too much about is breastfeeding, which is quite helpful, and avoiding secondhand smoke exposure. Second, I think we should continue with the confirmatory RSV testing following usual indications to provide surveillance data. And then finally, I think pediatric ICUs should anticipate an increase in severe RSV cases. We've seen this in Australia already. So the RSV program should be prepared to even consider immunoprophylaxis off-season to the highest risk infants in case those levels get to those.
All right, Dr. Abhishek Raut from Apple Tree Medical Group. Always great having you on our weekly medical segment. We'll see you next time, sir.
Thanks so much for having me.
Top stories from around the world coming up next as trading app Robinhood began to trade its own stock. The Biden administration looks to boost cybersecurity, and COVID-19 cases saw a surge in Japan. These stories and more coming up next. Robinhood has started selling its own stock on Wall Street, the very place the online brokerage has rattled with its stated goal of democratizing finance. Through its app, Robinhood has introduced millions to investing and reshaped the brokerage industry, all while racking up a long list of controversies. Robinhood Markets and 3 of its executives are selling up to 60.5 million shares of its stock in an initial public offering. Trading began on the Nasdaq today under the ticker symbol HOOD. It was priced late Wednesday at $38 a share. The Biden administration is taking steps to make it harder for online intruders to undermine the nation's cybersecurity. An order from the White House calls for the development of a public-private partnership that would protect important online parts of the nation's critical industries. Among the incidents that prompted the effort was the May cyber attack against the nation's largest pipeline, which delivers nearly half of the fuel consumed on the East Coast. The spread of the COVID-19 Delta variant is raising infection rates and concerns about the U.S. economic recovery. But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell suggests that the Delta variant poses little threat to the economy, at least so far. Mr. Powell spoke after the Fed ended its latest policy meeting. It signaled that the economy is moving closer to the substantial further progress it wants to see before reducing the $120 billion in Treasury and mortgage bonds that it is buying each month to try to spur more borrowing and spending. Japanese officials have sounded the alarm as Tokyo reported record-breaking coronavirus cases for the 3rd straight day, with the Olympics well underway. Japan's chief cabinet secretary said COVID-19 infections are surging not only in the capital area, but across the country at a rate Japan hasn't seen during the pandemic. Tokyo reported more than 3,800 new cases on Thursday, up from more than 3,100 on Wednesday, and double the numbers a week ago. The death toll has risen to 99 from floods that hit a province in central China last week. The city of Zhengzhou, the capital of Henan province, was hit by record rainfall 9 days ago. Floodwaters overcame the city's subway system, killing 14 people and turned streets into rushing rivers and washed away vehicles. Questions have swirled about the death toll after a report of more than 200 wrecked vehicles were found in a flooded tunnel. China's foreign minister has met with a delegation of high-level Taliban officials as their ties warm ahead of the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan. A photo posted on the ministry's website showed Wang Yi posing with senior Taliban leader Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar and his delegation before sitting down to talks. Mr. Wang said the hasty withdrawal of the U.S. and NATO reveals the failure of America's policies and offers the Afghan people an important opportunity to stabilize and develop their own country. China and Afghanistan share a narrow border, and China is concerned about a possible spillover of Islamic militancy. Afghanistan's Taliban have taken responsibility for the killing of a comic in southern Kandahar. Nazar Mohammed, better known as Qaza Zwan, was shown on film widely circulated on social media. In the video, he was slapped and killed by two men. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid says the two men were Taliban and have been arrested. The brutality of the killing heightened fears of revenge attacks. Hundreds of people are reportedly being held by Taliban in areas they have overrun. Human Rights Watch this month said there are concerns of atrocities committed by Taliban. Burundi's government now says it will accept COVID-19 vaccines, becoming one of the last countries in the world to embrace them. But the health ministry says it will not take responsibility for any side effects they might cause. The health minister on Wednesday said the vaccines will arrive with the support of the World Bank. Burundi's announcement came the same day that neighboring Tanzania launched its vaccination campaign, retreating from the government's previous denial of the pandemic. Haiti's newly installed prime minister has pledged to hold elections as soon as possible following the slaying of President Jovenel Moïse. Ariel Henry spoke on Wednesday during his first press conference since being sworn in. He said the government's mission is to hold free, honest, and transparent elections with a large voter turnout, as he stressed the need for security. Mr. Henry stressed the importance of reconciliation and unity. An emergency housing project designed to fill gaps in housing support for Saskatoon youth officially opened its doors this past Monday. The first of its kind, Ground Zero Youth Transition Home, is a for-youth, by-youth institution, offering 10 bedrooms to help teens aged 15 to 19 transition to independence. The shelter provides supports for mental health and substance use, social services, medical outreach, nutrition programming, and has 24/7 on-site staff support. The provincial government plans on committing $1.1 million annually to support the new program, inspired by the Youth Committee who conceptualized and executed the project. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news from this past week. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.